ongoing learning. We always really loved reading, and there was a library in the village that our mom had. We would always bring home so many books, as many books as we could carry in the boat, and just read through them. We both loved adventure stories like Robinson Crusoe, and even like mysteries or detective novels. And then we also loved Greek mythology. I think we had that, I don't know, there's that big book that's golden and it has all these really cool stories. Then in middle school and high school, we attended the public school in Homer. I think adjusting to public school definitely made us feel some of the gaps that maybe we had missed in our earlier education. And I don't think any of it was that big of a deal, but when you're in middle school and high school, you're very conscious of the things that you might not have learned that other people have. But the more obvious things were some of the more social aspects, like still to this day, we're catching up on pop culture references and just those like social dynamics that when we were younger, it was more like playground games that I've never heard of, or just things that all the other kids have been doing together for a long time. But looking back, I don't think I missed out on too much, but it definitely, I remember those moments where you think, oh, I've never heard of that. I have no idea what they're talking about. I think a lot of the skills and lessons that we learned as kids are still the things that my sister and I love to do. So that sense of exploration and creativity has really stuck with us and has honestly, I feel like led us to feel empowered to create our own business. And we've never really had that feeling of being afraid to do something different or on our own, or I don't know. I attribute some of that to homeschooling and being raised in a place where you kind of had to do your own thing. So I'm really grateful for the things that our parents taught us there. And yeah, I would do it again, absolutely. In the last couple of weeks, we've all been facing a lot of changes, and we've been thinking a lot about all the families who have kids who are going to be at home learning. And yeah, it's definitely made us think about our own upbringing and the way we were homeschooled. It's a big change for a lot of families, and I don't blame parents for being a little bit stressed about it and not being sure that their kids are getting the right information or learning as much at home. But I think from our experience, we kind of learned so much from just being with our parents in the world. I know there are definitely things that kids need to know and kids are really curious about, but just giving kids the time and space to play and be creative is just maybe the most important thing for us.
Emma Lakaitis, one half of Salmon Sisters, a company that sells seafood and fishing gear from Alaska. This is Outlook. We heard this week the sad news that William Helmreich, an American professor and Outlook interviewee, had died of coronavirus in New York City. He was 74 and had had a tremendous life working as a sociologist and writing books about the city he loved. He spent 4 years and wore out 9 pairs of shoes, walking every block in New York, 6,000 miles, and chatting to strangers and gathering their stories all along the way. He spoke to the programme in 2016.
I grew up on the streets of New York City in Manhattan, and in a way, this experience was probably the reason why I ended up doing these books on New York City, because my father and I played a game on the weekends when he was not working called Last Stop. We took the subway to the last stop. New York had 212 miles of track at that time. And when we would get out, we would walk around the neighborhood. And so when I went out to the Throg's Neck section of Queens and the Bronx, I learned that fish do not come from a fish store, but they come from the water. I went out to neighborhoods that looked like marshland and that today are very built up. So in that way, my love for New York City was kindled. my goal was to capture the heart and soul of this great city and to try to understand it through the eyes of its people. I did not plan what I'm going to do, but I had maps and I always kept a record of what streets I walked on. It's very different when you walk a city purposefully, because when you walk it purposefully, it means you end up seeing every block. When people say I grew up in a certain neighborhood, they think they know the neighborhood in its entirety, but very often that's not the case. They have patterns of walking. And then there will be other blocks in this very same neighborhood that they never walked on because they had no reason to. And when you do that, and you walk on other blocks, you learn all sorts of things. Had I not walked every, say in Brooklyn, I would not have found a man in Bergen Beach, Brooklyn, who had 11. Not everyone likes this idea. His neighbor put up a fence so that he wouldn't have to look at it. But he says, well, the cherry trees, they rot by the summer. This way they stay fresh all the time. I still remember when I had the first stuffed animal, a tiger with sunglasses. He's his own person. These things are all learned when you walk. If you don't walk, you don't see because you go by too fast. One of the interesting discoveries I made in walking the city was that people are a lot friendlier. They're gruff because they're New Yorkers, but they have this kind of smart aleck sense of humor that if you get into it, and having grown up here, I'm very into it. The reason, in part, is the way I engage them is, what's that horse doing in your backyard? Or, how come you're still here? You're a white guy in a totally black neighborhood. How come you stayed? In other words, I don't tell people, hello, I'm doing a
And that's easy, or to say you can get your hands on the money. And our insurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's apply, and 50 cents per SMS.
Live and work from home uninterrupted with Telkom. Connect, work, learn and entertain with prepaid or postpaid LTE. It's easy and affordable to access the internet, to find educational classes online, check into the office, stream movies, music, game and keep in touch with loved ones from your place. Stay connected from as little as 99 Rand for 10 gigs. Dial *180# for prepaid or click telkom.co.za to sign up for a contract. T's and C's apply.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that South Africa is under a nationwide lockdown from the 27th of March to the 16th of April 2020. This means everyone must stay at home. Religious, social and sports gatherings are not allowed. All restaurants, liquor outlets, recreational and leisure outlets cannot be open during the lockdown. The sale of alcohol and cigarettes is also not allowed. Don't be part of the problem. Don't put your life and the lives of others at risk. Play it safe. Play it by the rules. The coronavirus kills. Stay at home and save South Africa. Together, we can beat this. A message from government.
The Money Show with Bruce Whitfield is proudly brought to you by Absa Corporate and Investment Banking. The bravery to shine a light and the strength to keep going during this crisis. That's African tenacity. Absa's a registered FSP.
That's it from the Money Show for this evening. Looking forward to joining you tomorrow with Wendy Lola, Colin Cullis, our regulars on a Wednesday night, plus of course all the other big stories, big developments from the world of money and business.
This is Eyewitness News.
Good evening, I'm Tabo Baloy. We begin on the international front. Britain's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says Prime Minister Boris Johnson is breathing without any assistance but remains in intensive care. Johnson was moved to the ICU of a London hospital yesterday after being admitted for COVID-19 related symptoms 10 days after testing positive for the disease. Raab, who acts on Johnson's behalf in Downing Street, says the Prime Minister remains in good spirits and is receiving the best care possible. More than 6,000 people in the UK have died from COVID-19. Back home now, tenants at a KwaZulu-Natal produce market have complained about poor adherence to safety standards after an employee was tested positive for COVID-19 last week. The tenants, who want to remain anonymous, have told Eyewitness News the whole market should have been shut down and disinfected as soon as a positive case was detected. However, KwaZulu-Natal Agriculture MEC Bongis Tolamuloi says they conducted an assessment and decided that shutting down the market was unnecessary, as the worker and the people she came into contact with were isolated from the market. Tolamuloi says shutting down the market would have negatively affected food security in the province. Nkosikona Duma has more.
It is understood that a municipal employee at the Pietermaritzburg produce market who tested positive for COVID-19 had gone on holiday to India, and upon her return in mid-March, she failed to self-isolate. This man, a tenant who sells fruits and vegetables at the market, says people who use the facility were kept in the dark about the employee's case.
Nobody brought out the truth. So when the story broke about this lady having it's not her fault, but everything was like kept under wraps. We only found out a couple of days later.
Another tenant says the municipal employee should have been quarantined and never allowed to return to the markets after her trip.
Now it's because of her that our landlord. I mean, look, you understand, we got kids, we still got to go back to our family.
KwaZulu-Natal Agriculture MEC Bongis Sitole insists that health and safety measures have been adhered to. Sitole Muloi says there is no need to panic, as health officials have certified the produce markets as safe. Nkosikona Duma, Eyewitness News, Pietermaritzburg.
Lesotho's on lockdown, but the country's constitutional court sat to hear a case in which Prime Minister Tom Thabane's decision to suspend Parliament is being challenged. Thabane cited the fight against COVID-19 as the reason when he issued a gazette which was not approved by the king, but his party's NEC and MPs, coalition partners and the opposition say the decision was both unprocedural and unconstitutional. Ntakwana Ngatani reports.
Prime Minister Tom Thabani's reason that Parliament be suspended to contain the coronavirus is being questioned in the Constitutional Court, as Advocate Christopher Leputin argues.
The future role of Parliament in the fight is not known. It is very unwise to close Parliament so prematurely.
The opposition, represented by Advocate Vituka Mulati, has joined the application.
And my clients are saying, as people who are parliamentarians, and from the party perspective, we are the main opposition party, this prorogation is improper.
And Judge Sakwane cornered Advocate Mutia Tele, who represents Thabani, and was arguing that there's nothing amiss about suspending Parliament for 3 months when the general lockdown is only 21 days.
So to contain the virus in relation to Parliament, we have to close it down for 3 months. Yes, I thought whereas the other institutions of the state, even private businesses, has let us stand are not going to be closed down for such a long time.
The court has reserved judgment. Ntakwana Ngatani, Eyewitness News.
And finally, Global Citizen, along with the World Health Organization, has announced another Together at Home concert, but this time to celebrate health workers around the globe. Lizzo, Billie Eilish and Elton John are expected to perform at a virtual concert curated by Lady Gaga on the 18th of April. Gaga, along with Global Citizen, has already raised $35 million for the WHO. The funds will go towards buying protective gear for health workers and support efforts to develop drugs and vaccines. Gold trading at $1,651.62 an ounce. Rand at 18.16 to the dollar, 22.42 to the pound, 19.78 to the euro. Brent crude oil at $33.02 a barrel. Gauteng's partly cloudy tomorrow, thus later afternoon thunder showers. Johannesburg dropping to an overnight low of 12, peaking at 21 degrees. Pretoria 13 and 23, Edinburgh 19 and 20. Cape Town clear skies, becoming partly cloudy with a moderate easterly breeze and a high of 24. The top story in Eyewitness News, the South African Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab says Prime Minister Boris Johnson is breathing without any assistance but remains in intensive care.
Eyewitness News, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, log on to ewn.co.za or ewn.mobi.
Stay up to date with all the latest information on containing and avoiding the spread of the coronavirus.
At 18 hours GMT, welcome to the newsroom from the BBC World Service. Hello, I'm Valerie Sanderson. China lifts its 2-month lockdown on Wuhan, the city where the coronavirus emerged. The British Prime Minister Boris Johnson remains in hospital in intensive care with COVID-19.
He remains stable overnight. He's receiving standard oxygen treatment and breathing without any assistance.
In the US, New York has its highest daily death tolls so far in the outbreak, with 731 people losing their lives. But the city's governor sees signs of hope.
Right now we're projecting that we are reaching a plateau in the total number of hospitalizations. It still depends on what we do.
And a top Premier League star heads home.
Son running forward. Son into the penalty here. Is it 3-2? It is 3-2. Son beats Reina. What an end to the game.
Find out why after this here on the BBC.
BBC News, I'm John Shaw. The lockdown has just been lifted in the city of Wuhan in China's Hubei province, where the global coronavirus pandemic started. Stephen McDonald reports.
Wuhan police have warned that motorists should expect heavy traffic on roads out of the city. For more than 10 weeks, millions of people have not been able to leave the vast transport hub in central China, and initially only those with health clearance are permitted to go. Even with a limited air service, 200 flights are departing on the first day, carrying out 10,000 passengers. Chinese state media has shown aerial footage with nearly 100 high-speed trains ready to depart, and highway roadblocks have been removed.
The International Labour Organization says the coronavirus outbreak is having a catastrophic effect on working hours and earnings across the world. The It said more than 80% of workers lived in a country where partial or total lockdowns were in operation, threatening the livelihoods of 1.25 billion workers. Guy Ryder is the ILO's Director General.
We're estimating today that the total worldwide loss of jobs for the next 3 months could be as much as 195 million. We don't have to sort of indulge in hyperbole here. This is a jobs catastrophe. We haven't seen anything like this in our lives. It is a drama.
The report warns that while wealthier countries have offered some financial support for businesses and workers, in developing countries, millions of people are employed in the informal sector with no social protection. The head of the group of Eurozone finance ministers has called on them to take bold measures in response to the coronavirus crisis. Ahead of a meeting of EU finance ministers, Mario Centeno said ministers had to show European citizens that they would be protected.
This is not just about surviving the virus. It is about getting our economies back on their feet. So today, I will also call on ministers to make a clear commitment for a coordinated and sizable recovery plan. We all know this is not time for business as usual politics. We must show our citizens that Europe protects them. For them, we must stand tall.
It's urging them to approve an economic recovery plan involving measures worth more than €500 billion. The British government says the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who remains in intensive care because of COVID-19, is in a stable condition and doesn't need mechanical ventilation. Mr Johnson was admitted to hospital over the weekend and moved to intensive care on Monday. At a news conference, the authorities also said the number of new coronavirus infections was showing signs of levelling off, but that the figure for deaths was still rising. They say they're cautiously optimistic. World News from the BBC. The solitary US state of New York is on the cusp of overtaking Italy for the confirmed number of COVID-19 cases. It's reported to have almost 132,000, about 700 more than Italy, but with only a third of Italy's population. Italy rapidly overtook China as the epicenter of the pandemic until it was superseded by the United States. Andrew Cuomo is the governor of Italy.
Bad news is 5,489 New Yorkers have lost their lives to this virus. When we talk about numbers, but that's 731 people who we lost. Behind every one of those numbers is an individual, is a family, is a mother, is a father, is a sister, is a brother. So a lot of pain.
Uganda has been invaded by a new swarm of locusts. The pests are devastating farms in the east of the country. There are fears that they will destroy the June harvest. Uganda's Crop Protection Commissioner said the swarm is about 5 kilometres wide. There is concern that funds earmarked for locust control are being diverted to fight coronavirus. The Mexican Health Ministry has warned that the country faces an acute shortage of doctors as it seeks to increase hospital care to fight the coronavirus outbreak. The Health Minister, Jorge Alcocer, said Mexico needed to recruit around 200,000 doctors rapidly. In the Chilean capital, Santiago, vets are keeping a puma in observation, which was captured after being seen wandering through the city. It's one of 3 big cats recently spotted in Santiago, which was unusually quiet because of the coronavirus lockdown. Vets say the animal is underweight and has several injuries, but will be released after medical attention. The other 2 pumas have already been released. And that's the latest BBC World News.
You're listening to the newsroom on the BBC World Service with me, Valerie Sanderson. 90 minutes ago, the Chinese city of Wuhan, where the coronavirus emerged,
BBC News, I'm John Shea. The lockdown has just been lifted in the city of Wuhan.
ちを見